Ray. What do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
All right, yo, let's get into it.
Try to take over the world. Try to take over the world.
And greatest chaplain in the world, Mr.
Try
Lance
to
O'Neill.
take over the world.
Yeah, yo, what up, world? It is Sunday night. I am surprised to see you guys, but we are here. It's me, your boy KJ. We got the best chaplain in the world, Mr. Lance O'Neill. I know we told you guys we wasn't gonna see you guys today, but as with everything in this election cycle, man, things are subject to change on a dime. And we just wanted to pop in and kind of talk a little bit to you. So we won't be long. For those for our more
we always say that, by the way.
Yeah, for our more fervent fan base, we're gonna try not to get into too many arguments tonight. This is strictly.
I'm not even gonna look at the chat room tonight. I already turned off the chat room. I'm like, I'm getting too mad that because look, I understand the debate, but when it becomes factual and objective, when objective and subjective become blurred, that's when I start to go, okay, there's an issue, because subjectivity, fine. Hey, subjective, you've got your opinion, I've got my opinion, that's cool. But when it's when objective claims are being made that are subjective, that's when I start to get a little bit unhinged. Maybe isn't the right word.
I think the entire country is a little unhinged right now. Hopefully everything will be resolved, or at least begin to start unraveling itself Tuesday. But according to the polls, it's not quite looking that way. And that's what brings us to tonight's mini episode. We are here to discuss polling and probably throw in a little bit of misinformation. Like I said, our goal tonight is just to chop it up a little bit, talk about some of the discrepancies we're seeing in the polls, and then get some feedback on what you guys are seeing out in the land, and then kind of go from there. With that being said, Chappie, you ready to jump into it, man? Let's get it on.
I am. Do you hear that little bit of crackle?
What is that? What do you hear? What are you hearing?
I'm just hearing a little crackle on your side. I'm not sure if it's mine or yours.
It
It
probably
be
is.
at the moment.
Yeah, it probably is.
Here we go.
Yep.
Let's
All
see
right. One of the things that I wanted to start off with this week, obviously, was the surprising information about the Des Moines register poll that had Vice President Harris surprisingly up by 3 points. And I know that kind of caught us all by surprise. So, Lance, you want to chop and talk about it a little bit and see what we can go?
You should have seen what the New York Times was saying. Now, people will accuse me of only watching Fox News. If you know me, you'll know that I gave up watching any TV news years ago. I don't watch Fox News. If I have news on, it's generally BBC. I'll watch CNN some more to kind of understand what the other side, and that's why I have New York Times and all that. New York Times, Wall Street Journal. I can't bring myself to give any money to the Washington Post, though. I really just can't. I'd feel horrible about myself. So here's the New York Times, like, oh, Iowa's in play. Oh my gosh, surprise poll. It's Iowa is Harris +3. And I'm like, first of all, I went like, that's weird. And I went out to Real Clear Politics and Real Clear Polling, because what they do is they look at all the different recent history, and they average it out. And so I was like, oh my gosh, +3. That's crazy. But Trump, that just doesn't sound, on its face, it doesn't sound right. And then as KT and I were getting ready for this, he popped up. I hadn't seen this Emerson poll, Trump +10. I went, yeah, that's more. I believe Trump, maybe not +10, but I think it's much closer to Trump +10 than it is to Harris.
Than it is. Yeah, like I said, and that's the issue you're gonna run into. As I was getting prepared for this episode this week, just kind of looking back and forth, depending on which way you're you're receiving your information, you're going to get polling that reflects your, your bias, right? If you're more conservative, you're gonna find polls that's gonna tell you that Trump's running away with it, plus 3 or 4 points in every state. I was listening to, what was the dude's name, man? The general that went to jail for a little bit, fell on his sword. Mike Flynn said that he expects all 50 states to go to Trump by early afternoon on election night.
Afternoon? How would that even be possible?
And I'm like, it's just, be careful, man. It's just so much.
It's one thing to be diehard MAGA. It's one thing to be what's the equivalent of what would be the equivalent of diehard Harris? Because I don't think Democrat's the right word.
We don't. So they had the liberals had the what was it, the Green Crew or the AOC crew for a minute, and they were getting, I forgot what their name were, but they were getting some momentum.
The squad.
Yeah, the squad. They were getting some momentum, but then I think 2 of them lost election. They didn't even make it out of the primaries this year.
What's her name? Cory Bush or
Cory Bush didn't. Yeah, Cory Bush, which was that was some bull. But I digress.
Oh, I don't know. All I know is she lost. But she lost in the primary though? Didn't
she? Lost in the primary. Yeah, she lost in the primary.
So, okay, so I look at that, and the funny thing about that, like if you want to look and you want to be hardcore blue or hardcore red, and I think MAGA, because to me, there's a significant difference between being MAGA and being conservative. I don't think MAGAs are conservative. I think MAGAs are more Trump ride or die. I'm not a Trump ride or die guy. Never have been. I started in 2016. I left the Republican Party because of Trump, which is something I say just about every week. But as a conservative, I vote the lesser of two evils, who is closer to what I believe, and that would be Trump. But I have never considered myself MAGA. I don't consider myself MAGA. I voted Romney in 2012. I think this country would be in a lot better place if Romney had been treated with fairness by the media, and I think Romney actually could have won 2012. I don't think McCain had any chance against Obama in 2008 because of the groundswell and just the historical confluences that happened, and it just came together that no one, even Hillary, didn't beat Obama. If you remember,
yeah.
she was the one in line.
Yeah, she
and
was
so
got crushed.
Yeah, and so I think it's interesting, like if I was truly looking at Trump and saying, "Oh, Trump's my guy, ride or die," I wouldn't want to see Trump plus 4 or 5. I would rather see, and this is a different way of thinking. I would rather see Trump by 0.5%, because then I can say to my friends and people, "Look, you have to get out. You have to go vote. Like, you have to do this. Your vote really could be the difference." Where if it's plus 5, you're going to have people that go, "Oh, or whichever side, my candidate's got it in the bag." And I think I don't know if that's what people think, but like, I mean, if you're in California, does it really matter if you go out and vote for president? Probably not, in terms of, I think it's going to go for Harris. But at the same time, going out and voting in California, do you want to vote for Steve Gardy or Adam Schiff? If I was in California, that would motivate me to go to the polls, because Garvey, even being down 20 points, I'd be like, I want to see Garvey pull it off and make this upset. And I'm not a Garvey fan either. My dad had some issues with Steve Garvey.
Yeah, I think the down ballot. Yeah, the down ballot elections are what should be the primary driver for getting people to the polls, man. But I listening to message boards and going in and watching social media feeds, I really believe we have a serious lack of fundamental civic understanding when it comes to civics and how governments function on both sides. Both sides of the Republican and Democrat. I just don't think we understand how government works, right? Like, it's unfathomable how people are just, so freaking, you're so.
Oh, I think KJ glitched. I'm really curious to see. We're just so what? So I think what KJ is going to say is we're divided and we're blinded by. Um, so well, maybe I won't speak for KJ. I'll say what I think it is. I think we have been taught in a way that it's tribal. It's me. Me and my side are right. You and your side are wrong. And it's gotten even worse. It's not only now that you're wrong, but that you are evil. There's no more wrong anymore. And that leads into this whole thing of if Trump wins, it's the end of the country. He's the Constitution. He's just going to. It looks like Cage is rebooting. It's going to be the end of the country. And if Harris wins, then that's it. We're all going to be communists, and you know it's just going to go off the rails, and there's not going to be an America anymore. I look at it and say the average person who it lives in this country is really not affected all that much by who's in the White House, who's in the Senate on a day to day basis. About the only way we're affected on a day to day basis is economically. And that's why I think it is very important things like taxation and interest rates and things like that. And that's where I look at it. And personally, I say it's very important that we have the Fed being audited because it is. Um, oh, KJ lost power. Whole block lost power. So it's going to be just me for a little bit. Let me text KJ back. Anyway, I'm going to ask him if there's any way to get on phone. Okay. Um, really interesting podcast with just me, right? What we were going to, so I just look at it and I think that the economic thing is actually the most important in terms of what taxes you pay, what the grocery store costs. Like when I see people on the TV shows saying that the pundits saying that, well, the economy's strong, and it is, but there's a way to look at that that can be very deceiving because the economy being strong and we only gained what was it 12,000 jobs this last reporting period, which was really really bad. That is a horrible number. 12,000 jobs added. But when I see these people say, well, there's the economy's fine, the economy's strong, and that may be true, but the part that I look at is a few things. The main one for me is the economy can be good and still be bad for individual people. And it's very simple because if I go to the grocery store and I fill up my cart of groceries and I'm used to that cart full of groceries being 90 or $100 and suddenly it's 140. And that happened just this a few days ago. I took my 11-year-old and we filled up the cart and she goes, wow, that's I don't think we've bought this much food in a long time. And that's mainly because when we go we don't stock up on stuff. We're buying a lot of other things throughout the week, so it's not one big purchase very often. And this time it was, and it was about $140. And 5 years ago, I believe that same cart would have been around probably 85 or 90. And I've done that myself. I've seen other people post on Walmart, their Walmart receipts that this is how much it was 4 or 5 years, 3, 4, 5 years ago compared to today. I've done that myself. I had one receipt that I paid somewhere around $120, and it was almost $300. It was $290 when I looked it up. So I think that's what people look at, and people have issues with regarding the economy. And so what KJ and I were going to talk about were some of these polls. Like again, you've got Iowa that is at -3, or depending on what you want to say, it could be +3 for Harris, and it could be -3 for Trump. And then you had another poll that came out and said it was +10 for Trump. And part of the problem with these polls is that not only there's such a swing, but you have to wonder how accurate these polls are. And if you go on to where KJ was showing when we started, at the website I prefer is um, Real Clear Polling. Well, Real Clear Politics, and then from there you go on to Real Clear Polling, which is a subsection. And I've got a dog that wants to jump up here, and let's say you get down there, Mister, because I don't want you up here. And one of the more important things is if you go to the map and you're able to see where the different where the different where the different ways that we're looking, there's a spot on there that you can see that it says the difference of what it was in history. So even on the very front page of it, general election Trump versus Biden, and it actually says Trump versus Biden, even though it's Trump versus Harris, because it actually does below that. And it says on this day in history, in 2016, Clinton was plus 4.3 and Biden was plus 7.9. And right now, on the Real Clear Politics average, it's Trump plus 3.1 for general election preview. Now, do I believe that Trump is actually up 3.1? I don't. I think this is going to be a lot closer than that. I don't think that Trump is actually, although he could, I'm not sure Trump is going to win the popular vote. If I had to put a bet on it, I would say he doesn't. I would say that Harris squeaks by somewhere around the 500,000 to $1 million, 1 million, which is going to be pretty low on the percentage wise. I could see her winning by 0.3 to 0.5%. But even if that happens, I do think that Trump is more likely right now. I think Trump is more likely to win uh, the presidency overall. So national polls right now, NBC poll has on November 3rd. Now the when these came out, it might not be today, but I'm just going to go through how they have them here. National polls because they don't update them. It's basically if there's something on November 3rd, this is just the most recent ones, right? So NBC News has Dead Heat 49.49. Tip, whatever Tip is, has it Trump +1. Emerson tied 49.49. New York Post has 49.49. And isn't that strange to have them all 49.49? You got to wonder. Like I, I do think that there is a lack of clarity, and I think that the polling, like if you own a poll and you're going out and you're getting paid for this poll by a news organization and you're doing polling, I would be really interested to see the legitimacy of the poll. Like I would like to be able to, as a independent person, be able to say, okay, give me the phone. You called 800 people and you got responses from 800 people. Let me have the phone numbers of 8 of them, 10 of them. So 8 of them would be 1%, right? So let's say I want you to give me 40 of those phone numbers. And of those 40, I'm gonna spot check. And I'm gonna call up and I'm gonna say, okay, hey, I'm from a independent organization. We are just spot checking the polls, and uh, we understand that you got a call from, or we were told that you got a call from Emerson Poll or from Tip Poll. We just want to verify. Do you remember receiving this phone call? Yes or no? Do you remember the answers you gave? Yes or no? And just kind of verify that these polls were actually done, because I'm just I'm a bit dubious when nearly every poll is identical. And you can say, well, maybe that's because they are all identical, and it's certainly possible. But I would think that especially in the states, and we do see some differences in the states. When you have the technology, and I remember I saw somebody else making this argument, so this is not me making a purely original argument. But we're in a world now that between texts and phones and online calling and everything else, it should be much easier to go in and do a scientific polling. And I understand the ideas of polling and statistics. Like if you see that 750 people or 800 people were polled, that represents a 4.9% margin of error. If you get up to 1,100 people polled, it represents a 3% margin of error. And the higher number of people you poll, the lower the margin of error is, which is better. It means you're likely to be more accurate. But there's a few problems. One is in today's environment, you don't know who you're calling. You don't know who they really are. Like they'll tell you if you go through for the demographics. I saw a poll from last week, and the I don't want to say the majority, but the largest percentage of responders were over 65 years old. I'd be really curious if this year there's the largest number of voters is 65 and older. Could it? Sure. Traditionally, it's been it skews older people vote more than younger people. But to that percentage, I don't think that's necessarily what's going on, and I'm not sure that's true. And the polls can only project what they're told, and that's another part of it. So, as a pollster, I call up and we can get into how the questions are asked. Even you can say, "Are you voting for President Trump or versus former President Trump or Donald J. Trump or Kamala Harris or Vice President Kamala Harris?" So just how you ask questions can influence people's how people respond. The other thing is, who's to say that there's not somebody with them? Is that going to influence? If you're on the phone and you're being asked by a pollster, "Hey, can you do this poll?" Sure. Are you going to vote for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? And you say Donald Trump, and you're in a room with people that you know are Kamala Harris supporters, whether it's friends or family or just somebody else around, loved one. Are you going to answer honestly? Or are you going to say, yeah, I'm going to vote for Harris because your significant other thinks you're voting for Harris? And the first thing you get a call is you're going to say, "Oh, it's a pollster." Oh, but even that, like, I don't know anybody. I'd be curious if anybody has actually received a phone call from a pollster. So I think that when you're talking about these polls, there's a question of how realistic they are. They're not very accurate. Um, when you go on to the Real Clear Politics and Real Clear Polling, I'd like to see if I can find it on here. There's a part on there that it has the historical numbers. I think that's really the interesting one because if you look at what the poll said in 2016 and 2020, um, they're significantly different than what you see now. And that's really, and what I mean by that is in 2016, and I'm trying to find the exact numbers, and it's somewhere on there. I'm on my tablet instead of on the computer. In 2016, Hillary Clinton was polling, I believe, around 4.1% ahead of Trump, and Trump won. And then Biden was up by like 7%. And while Biden won, it sure wasn't by 7%. And so that's where you start looking and go, what are the issues? So again, like uh, today in history, it was Clinton plus 4.3 and Biden plus 7.9. And right now, Trump 3 plus 1. I don't 3.1. I just don't think that these numbers can be relied upon all that great. I just think that there's issues with the polling. I think that the human element, and if you have the technology today, and KJ and I have been arguing about this for a while in terms of the requirements for IDs and ballots and electronic ballots or um, paper ballots. I think there's a real problem when we don't trust the electoral system. And the fact that we as a nation, being the richest nation or one of the richest nations, certainly one of the lead nations in the world, and we don't trust our elections anymore. You have people who on both sides are already saying they're going to contest whatever the results are. They're going to contest. It's going to be not just the lawyers, but the people. We're going to get in the streets and we're going to rebel. Okay. Personally, I think what we need to do is take a good deep breath. If you are that involved in thinking that the election is already being stolen, then you need to go out and you need to volunteer at the polling places. Just be there and keep an eye on what's going on. Follow the rules. That's another part. You can't go in and demand certain things. All you're there is just to make sure that the the polls are going the way they're supposed to go in terms of one person comes in, they check the roll, they press their buttons and they get out, right? When the polling's done, you stay there until until the votes are counted. But I have a hard time with the fact that I can go out and buy a ticket to Powerball, and if I buy it online and put my credit card in, and whether it's Quick Pick or whatever, I can do a Powerball. The Powerball, they know who I am when they do the draw. They know within probably seconds, if not minutes, that I won X amount in a lottery because I bought it with a credit card, did it online. So my question is, why can't we, with the technology we have, do something along the lines of electronic voting? And I'm fine with voting from home if you can verify an ID. You have to have a ID, a valid driver's license that shows your citizenship. Because I know some of the states don't require you to be a citizen to get an ID. But I think that there's a way, even those states who say, all right, well, we want to have the illegal immigrants, those people that shouldn't be in this country, we want them to come out of the woodwork. We want them to get insurance for their cars. We want them to be able to, get around and be positive members of society. So we're going to give them a driver's license. I still think there's a way on the driver's license you can have a number that says this person is valid to vote or not valid to vote. And then if you went online and you clicked in your name and you clicked in your number and you provided, I don't know, your last the year of your birth or whatever the number is, um, then there should be a way to be able to go in and vote that way. If you can do the security, because we all worry about the hacking, right? And what's more likely that out of 360 million people, take away everybody under 18, so about a fifth of the people, so somewhere around 280 million people can vote. Is it more likely that hackers are going to go in and be able to hack 280 million computers, or they're going to be able to go in and hack a few voting machines in certain locations, especially if you have a mistake that happened like in Colorado, where they actually had some of the passwords apparently, and I don't have this verified, but I read this, that the passwords for some of these machines was actually online if you knew where to look, open source, which is horrible. You can't have stuff like that happen. So if you can't have secure elections, it throws the entire system in out of whack. And that's what happened in 2020 is that people believe what happened even less. Now, I've never said that the 2020 election was stolen. I've always said the election was manipulated, and I will stand by that because manipulation is pretty easy to prove. The perhaps the easiest one to point at is the Hunter Biden laptop story that was suppressed by Facebook and Twitter and some of these major social, almost all of the social networks, as well as not covered by any of the legacy media. And they've done studies since then that said, hey, that would have affected a lot of people's votes. I've read upwards of 1 to 2 million, which would likely have switched the election. But did Biden win? Well, yeah, sure he won. He's the president. And so with this next election, what you don't want to have is you don't want to have a repeat of people not know you don't want anybody running into day 3 and 4 and 5 of not knowing who the election was. Those of us who are old enough know what it was like and remember the 2000 election with Bush and Gore and having that problem and just how it really threw the nation for a loop. I don't want that. I would rather, as bad as it sounds, for anybody who is a Trump fan or going to vote for Trump, I would rather Trump lose decidedly than have it go into that 3, 4, 5 day slide. And of course, I'd prefer Trump to win that way as well. And that way, Harris supporters would go, okay, well, clearly Trump won. I think the most damaging thing for this country is if we really do get to have 3 or 4 states that are not able to not able, willing, whatever the word is, to count their votes, and that delays who wins the election by multiple days. I think that's where is that necessarily going to lead to violence and rioting and all that? I don't know. I don't I wouldn't think so because if you don't know, like, how are you going to go out and riot? Oh, we don't know the election. Bah. Well, but you don't know. Your guy might have still won, or your girl might have still won. So if it comes out that hey, after 3 or 4 days, there were some I don't know potential shenanigans that happened in Arizona that would have made the difference. Well, that's where you're in. What is it, Maricopa County? That's already saying we're not going to have the votes counted on the day of the election. Well, that's where I worry, and that's where I hope that it doesn't come down to Maricopa County then, and I hope that the votes are already done, and it doesn't matter what Maricopa County or any other individual county does because we're already past that, and we're at the point where somebody has won. I think it's going to be very interesting to see. I think the key is going to be Pennsylvania. Looking at the polling and looking where the different what the map looks like, I don't. I have a hard time thinking that Trump is going to win if he doesn't win Pennsylvania. So I'm going to go through. KJ and I were thinking about going through, and this again 2 days to election day in history. I just told you what that was, but I want to go through these real quick because I think this is really interesting. In 2016, so I'm going to go 2016, 2020, and then today. What the polls are saying. So for Florida, Clinton was up 0.09, sorry. Biden was up 1.4, and Trump is +8 in Florida. That's a pretty big indicator that Trump's going to win Florida. In 2016, Trump +4.6, Biden up zero point 0.4 in 2000, and Trump up 1.49. So that makes me think Georgia is actually going to be very, very close. And it was in the 2020 election, I believe Biden won by less than 20,000 votes. So if Trump were to go up 1.9, that would be a pretty clear victory for Trump there. In North Carolina, Trump was up 1.8 in 2016, 0.3 in 2020, and up 1.5 in North Carolina. Pretty significant again. Nevada, let me just do a couple of these. Nevada, Trump's up 1. Arizona, up 2.6. Michigan, Harris is up 0.8. And that's got to be scary for the Harris campaign because Clinton was up 5 in 2016. Biden was up 5.1 in 2020, and Harris is only up +0.8, so under 1%. Ohio's currently Trump +7.1. Pennsylvania, again, Clinton +2.8 in 2016. In 2020, Biden plus 4.3, and now Trump is up 0.3. And Wisconsin's very, very similar to that in terms of Clinton up 5.5 in 2016, Biden 6.6, and now Harris 0.3. And then nationally, it was Clinton up 1.8, as we said, Biden 7.2, and Trump 0.1. So, as much as I'm reading these polls and I'm saying they're interesting, I also don't believe polls. I think polls have been screwed up. I think that there's a lot of, whether it's mismanagement, whether it's malintent, whether it's just incompetence. In 2020, Romney was up in the final polls. Everybody thought Romney was going to win. And you can say, well, it's because of Hurricane Sandy back in when that happened, and Chris Christie putting his arm around President Obama and saying, "Hey, President Obama's done a great job helping out the state of New Jersey." That really helped solidify Obama as somebody who would reach across the aisle, all the way to Romney's ground game having a major issue with their app to get people out to vote. There's lots of reasons. But I think that if you are looking at what's going to happen, the only way to know, obviously, is when we have the final count and when we have the vote. So the polls are fun. The polls are interesting to look at, but ultimately, I don't think the polls matter all that much. Nobody's got the polls right. Nobody gets the polls right. It's funny, they talk about the most accurate polls, and even the most accurate polls are not within 1% in most states. So go out and vote, and vote for whoever you feel is the most in line with your beliefs, with how you think this country should be run. If you are voting on character and specifically on how good of a character the person is, then I'm guessing you're going to be voting third party, because I don't think either the current people have the highest levels of integrity and morality and continue dot dot dot. But if you're looking at policy and you're saying who's most in line with my policy and you vote that way, I will never have a problem with anybody voting that way. Democracy is not going to end. This is not going to be the end of this country. It's not going to fall apart just because Harris or Trump wins. Um, if Trump wins, he's not going to be able to go in and rip up the Constitution and just suddenly take over and have the military back him and become a fascist and do whatever he wants as in terms of the country. If Harris comes in, she's not going to be able to come in and same thing, rewrite the Constitution and just with a flick of a pen have whatever she wants to have happen, or the Democrats have happen. If you go in and you vote, and oh, the whole city lost power apparently. Oh, so that's just me for KJ then. So go out and vote. Take the time out if you haven't yet. Um, I'm in a real quandary because I've requested my mail-in ballot and I still haven't got it from the state of Texas, being military, and so I'm kind of concerned about that because I want to vote, and so I'm really hoping that it comes in the mail today or tomorrow, so I can postmark it and get it back in the mail, and then it will count. Um, but ultimately, whoever wins, we need to support the president in terms of doing what is within the lines of constitutionality. If you oppose the president, then you need to vote. If you don't like how your local people are running, you need to go out and vote. If you don't like who the school board is or who your local state representative or your state senator is, you need to vote. That is the only way that true change can happen in a peaceful means in this country. And I used to believe in that every vote was a term limit. I don't anymore. I think the way the system is done, you need to have term limits. But until then, a term limit voting is the only term limit we have. So no matter where you are, no matter what you believe, if you are of age and you are a legal citizen and you have registered or have the ability to register in the next 2 days, go register and go vote. And vote for the policies that are going to have the influence on this country you'd like to see most. And that's what I will say. So since KJ is not coming back, I hope he gets his power back on. I will say good night to all of you. I hope to see, I don't know if we're going to do something Tuesday night, but one way or the other, it's going to be interesting. So I hope you guys all have a good night, and I'm out.